I don't know which.
You can also do French.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Quel canal pour la langue?
a lot of people seem to be still in traffic, not only in the room, but also Guy Verhofstadt will be a bit late. Before I start, I would like to draw the attention on the Wi-Fi connection. The name of the connection is Ask Arab Leaders, and the name of the password is also Ask Arab Leaders. Just like the hashtag, you can use the hashtag, don't be shy. You can ask questions by Twitter, and our moderator, Isabelle Durand, will try to include as much of them as possible in the questions in the debate. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to this unique debate on the future of the Arab world. Today, 4 years and a half after the start of the Arab Spring, things don't seem to look very bright. There is a war in Syria, Iraq, Libya and Yemen. Yesterday was the first anniversary of the birth of ISIS, or the Islamic State. A few days ago, we saw these awful attacks in Tunisia and Kuwait. Yesterday, the general prosecutor of Egypt was murdered with 9 other people in the car. The only 2 Arab Spring countries that seem to be stable, Jordan and Lebanon, have to deal with a massive refugee crisis and with the Islamic State on its borders. That's why people start to call the Arab Spring the Arab Winter. This seems logic at first sight, but the question is it fair? 25 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, member states of the European Union, like Romania and Bulgaria, still have huge problems with moving forward. Hungary is even moving backwards, and these are members of the European Union. If we look a bit further back in history, to the French Revolution, we can also see how much time France needed. It took France not less than 80 years from the French Revolution in 1789 to the first stable democracy in 1870. Of course, we live in different times and evolutions goes faster, but it is a bit unfair to call the Arab Revolution a failure after only 4 years. In fact, there are several similarities between the Arab Revolution and the French Revolution. One is the growth of population. In the century before the French Revolution, the population of France doubled in size, which means there were a lot of young people and there were no jobs and no future, so this generation was pushing for change, not once, but time and again. In the Arab world, the population went from 100 million in 1950 to almost 450 million today. 30% of the population is between 15 and 29 years old. And just like in the French Revolution, it is this generation that is pushing for change, and it's about economy, it's about religion, it's about freedom, and it's about democracy. So there is a social change happening on the ground in the Arab world, but it is hard to see. What we see are the crazy guys, the extremists. But be aware, it's not the Arabs that have become more extreme. It are only the extremists that have become more extremists. The real change is happening below the surface, but at one point, this change will come up like a huge tsunami, visible for everyone. But in order to try to give this tsunami a bit of a direction, leadership is needed. That is why we have formed this network of Arab leaders for freedom and democracy in 2012. Each one of these members has played and still plays an important role in their respective country during and after the revolution. We have Mahmoud Jibril, former Prime Minister of Libya, of the Transitional National Council and leader of the largest political party in Libya. AL-KHASAWNEH, who is also former Prime Minister of Jordan and one of the few real Jordanian reformers. Naguib Sawiris, an Egyptian businessman and founder and leader of the Free Egyptian Party, the most liberal party of Egypt. Ahmed Hariri, who is the leader of the Future Movement and one of the leaders of the 14 March movement that brought independence to Lebanon in 2006. Fawastello, one of the early opposition people from Damascus, and in order to escape Assad's murder squads, he had to flee to Germany, where he still works on another future for Syria. Unfortunately, Yassin Brahim, Tunisia's Minister of International Cooperation, couldn't make it. He called me yesterday saying that because of the recent attacks in Susa, the Prime Minister needs him right now in Tunis. From the European side, we have Hans van Baalen, member of European Parliament and former president of the Liberal International, Guy Verhofstadt, co-president of the Spinelli Group and the ALDE Group, will join us a bit later, and the role of moderator will be taken by Isabelle Durand, co-president of the Spinelli Group and former Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium. I wish you a great debate, and I wonder if the panel would say about the Arab Revolution what Churchill said about the war. This is not the end. It's not even the beginning of the end. It's rather the end of the beginning. Thank you very much.
Well, my friends, who want to start to react about what said Kurt in introduction, and maybe to make a short statement about his vision in his own country? So, who want to start? Yeah, okay. Mr. AL-KHASAWNEH from Jordania. The micro?
The quotation just made about by Churchill that this is not the end, not even the beginning of the end, but the end of the beginning, reminds me of another quotation also by an Englishman, Matthew Arnold, who in the 19th century visited the great cathedral in France, La Grande Chartreuse, and he wrote a long poem from which I take the two lines. Wandering between two worlds, the one dead, the other powerless to be born. Probably this is a fair description of the state in which the Arab world finds itself at present, and it depicts the same picture that has been conveyed to us by the quotation from Churchill. I don't think that we have seen the end of the so-called Arab Spring. Remember that spring is a seasonal thing and it comes back and back again. But what is sure, regardless of whether the Arab Spring was internally induced or induced from outside sources, and probably a combination of the two, one thing it has shown and shown clearly is that the old system is giving in and things cannot go back to what they were. To try to locate where we are, I think that the established order is in the process of fighting back, and history teaches us that the most outrageous decisions, the most irrational decisions take place when a dominant minority thinks that it's going to lose its privileges in the future. I have argued often against just pinpointing one cause for what is happening, and I again would say that although it is very important to recall the explosion in demographics, the effect of the economy, the inflation, the extremes of poverty and richness in the Arab world, which combine together. These are all important, but we cannot really explain the Arab Spring, the Arab revolutions, as have been told, simply by reference to material things. I think that we live in the modern world in an age where the human soul itself has been hurt and is wounded. The Islamic world in particular has been humiliated since 1918. This is something that has to be taken into account. But beyond that, there is, I mean, nothing can explain the sense of alienation that young people experience, and that must be one of the factors that leads them to join those very extremist groups, except that the fact that material civilization simply cannot deal with that wound in the human soul. I think we are going to see a lot of suffering. Of course, it would have been much better to have avoided all these revolutions and for the region to have evolved in an evolutionary manner. I mean, I have in mind the difference between the revolution in France, the French Revolution, and the developments concurrent with it that took place in England and averted the same sort of violence. It's very difficult to predict what the future will have for us, but I think we are passing through a very difficult period where on the one hand, as I said earlier today, we have the example and the model of the wars of religion, and we also have the model of the Eastern question and the interference in the Ottoman Empire in the 19th century, but by what used to be called the great powers and what we now call the international community. I would warn very much against demands for interference from abroad. It is very, very sad, for example, that in those countries which have fought very much against milder forms of mandates and colonialism are now asking for foreign interference. I am not condemning those who ask for that, but I think that this is a very sad comment on the present state in the Arab world.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for this first vision. Mr. Jibril, he spoke about the old system is resisting in this period and also the interference with the international community. What do you think about the difference between the French Revolution, but in this world today, interconnected world, what is different for you in this period regarding the French Revolution?
Well, I don't think that history repeats itself, as too many people might say, We are in a totally different age. I would argue that the years from 1985 till mid-90s, there was a real change of paradigms in the global scale. First, demographically, in terms of demography, the world now is over 7 billion people, and by 2050 is going to be approaching 250. At the same time, there is irreversible alliance between technology and capital, and this has resulted in what we call the ultra-symbolic economy. I would just give a small example. 1976, the real economy, which is based on imports and exports and balance of payment, was double the ultra-symbolic economy. Today, the ultra-symbolic economy is 12 times the classic economy. The ultra-symbolic economy means a virtual economy based on stock markets, bonds. Money creates money. Money doesn't create more food. Therefore, there is more population, and the world economies are turning into service economy, which might result in real starvation during the early years of the 20s of this century. The third indicator, which is very important because of this irreversible alliance between technology and capital, is the emergence of what we call the knowledge society. Knowledge society is unprecedented in the history of the human beings. Our problem is that we are still dealing and comprehending what's going on using the frame of reference which was derived from the industrial age, the way we were brought up, our educational system, the way we were trained. We were trained in a dyadic way, black and white, either this or that. The new age is so complex. I would say that we need different types of skills. We need how to deal with the management of flow of information, management of complexity, and management of diversity, which are unprecedented in our history. 2005, I had an interview in one of the famous TV channels, and I was interviewed about the future of the Arab world. the subject of this session. And I told the interviewer that the Arab future will be made by the dot-com generation, the Arab dot-com generation. And I think we are still in the first chapter. Not the first chapter, probably we are still in the introductory part of these new upheavals which gonna sweep the whole Arab world, you know. Hopefully, we need how to comprehend, and when we comprehend, we know how to manage for a better future of our generations.
Okay, so with this new generation of young generation, I go to Mr. Tello from Syria, and could I ask you your reaction, but also do you think that regarding the evolution of Daesh, all what happened with, of course, ISIS, how do you feel as Syrian, this dot-com generation, but also this using of technology by Daesh as really a big force today?
Actually, first of all, technology is something neutral. Everybody can use it, the angel and the devil in the same time. But the main question, how these extremists appear, I think this is the main question, and how we can get rid of them. I don't think after 4 years of revolution in Syria, and after 2 years of appearing of ISIS or Daesh, we call it, the international community could answer this question very accurately. And because of that, all the world is facing the failure of these policies. But like, I don't think now, after 1 year of fighting terrorism by a coalition led by Mr. Obama, there is any succeed in that. Actually, the terrorists and ISIS is winning. Not because the community is accepting that, but because there is a wrong policy somehow is helping or creating this kind of terrorism. I would say in Syria, for 2 years, there was a revolution. It started for 6 months without any weapons. The people has been killed in the streets very brutally by the world was watching. After that, the people start to defend themselves, and for 2 years there was no extremists, no extremists. And after that, we start to see this extremism. This extremism is a result of a wrong policy. And after 4 years, I think all the world should ask himself a question: was it the right approach we are taking in Syria for all this? I think the answer is no. Simply is no. For example, the refugee problem. Since three years, there was an ask for no-fly zones in Syria. I think no-fly zones in Syria is meaning that you will have less refugee, maybe 90% less refugee, as you're having now, not only in Europe, but all the world. And we could save the life of 100,000 persons, civilians, who have been killed by the bombarding every day. Every day we have 60, 70, until 100 persons being killed by civilian. Children being by this no-fly zone, if it was created. So I think we should, and the world should ask himself about this new approach of what's happening. I will let a lot of things for discussing with the audience, but I want to say something. We are not, yes, there is chaos now in Syria, there is destruction, there is extremists appear, there is a lot of things that, for me, I think the hope exists, and the good ending is waiting for us. But we are paying now the cost of 50 years of keeping silence, as one of my friends have said one time. And I think we are also paying the cost of the future, of the new future. It's like Jesus Christ, when he was on the cross, he was paying this price for the humanity. So we are paying now, we are on our cross now, paying this price for the future. I still not I still, I believe with the nice, with the good ending, like what's happening in every place in the world. And I think this, what we are passing now is part of this cost. We are facing all the problems in one package, in one package. In some countries, for example, they got rid of the dictatorship, and later the extremists appear. We still have dictatorship. We still have the extremists appear. The chaos is spreading everywhere, and the people is aware about this problem and start to eliminate it and get rid of it. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Hariri, do you think that the Lebanese experience could help us or could help your colleagues? Because, of course, it's a specific situation, but maybe it could help with you regard as Lebanese.
First of all, good evening for everyone. I want to thank the ALDE group for receiving us today in Brussels. We had a long meeting that it was important for us to give an overview about what's happening in our countries, especially that the Arab region is in turmoil everywhere, from Yemen to Libya to Tunisia to Lebanon to Syria to Iraq. So Lebanon faced a civil war, a long civil war from 1975 till 1990. It was a proxy war between a lot or many players in the region and internationally. And the Lebanese were the people that fought together or against each other, and we had more than 100,000 casualties between dead and wounded and unfound bodies of people. We still have some prisoners in Syria also that we hope after the revolution we can know what happened to them. The war ended with a Taif agreement. And you know, Lebanon is a country with 18 confessions. And it was a power sharing of 50-50 between Muslims and Christians. The Taif agreement was, the output was a power sharing, I think. And after that, we had a stability till 2005, when we had the assassination of Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri. And we are still working hard to keep the country stabilized or stable, although what's happening in Syria is affecting us a lot. I think that, first of all the problems in the Arab world should be solved by dialogue and not by force. Because this was our experience. We fought for 15 years against each other. And then we went to a national dialogue, and we had the Taif agreement that is not the perfect solution, but at least it ended the war. It put the country back on the track for recovering economy and restructuring and rebuilding it. And as political parties in Lebanon, and in the last 10 years, we face a lot of problems in our political system. And now, the problem is that we were divided as Lebanese also after the Syrian revolution started. There is two main coalitions in Lebanon, 14th of March and 8th of March. One is with the regime or pro-Syrian regime, and the 14th of March is with pro-revolution or the revolution in Syria. And we had a lot of expectation both coalitions had a lot of expectation that the Syrian crisis will end soon, and but as we know, now we are 4 years from the Syrian, from 15 of May 2000, March, sorry, 2011, when the Syrian revolution started, and a major party of Lebanon is participating with the regime in killing the people in Syria, and this party is Hezbollah. What we see as a solution that the Arab League should play a role in solving the chaos that is happening. The European Union also should or knows our region much better than the United States and Russia. The UN also, that is now an organization that is not dealing with the chaos in our region as it dealt with the chaos in, let's say, Serbia or in other places. I think that I still believe that the Arab Spring is a true revolution. And I can see in the eyes of the crowd here today, the eyes of our people, our young people, that want to learn from the European who suffered and sacrificed in 2 world wars to arrive to a unity. And we can achieve this maybe faster than before because of the globalization that we are having and of the social media and internet, and all these tools must be used to promote peace and democracy in our region. Thank you.
Okay, but vous m'avez lancé une perche, Mr. Van Balen. What are you thinking as member of the European Parliament about asking for a no-flight zone, problem of refugees? 25% of the Lebanese, not the Lebanese, but the population in Lebanon is
30%.
So, okay,
And
so,
I didn't count the Palestinians.
and it's the same in Jordan because, of course, we have a lot of refugees. So, which is what can you say as European, our responsibility about support and maybe military support, about refugees, and also about what will happen in the future? Because, of course, it's also, not only, but also our responsibility.
Well, we are neighbors for the first thing, and that means that what happens in the Arab world will have consequences for Europe and vice versa. We have, of course, the problem that the intervention in Iraq failed. It produced the opposite of what we all hoped for. That means freedom and democracy in Iraq. And if you look now at the country, it's in shambles. So that means that in Europe and the United States, there is not really an appetite to intervene. I think there are a few things we must see and we should do. First of all, indeed, there are countries which are doing reasonably well. For instance, Egypt is a strong country. It has a constitution, it had presidential elections, it will have parliamentary elections. Is everything okay? Maybe not, but the country is a strong country which is of vital importance for stability in the region. So we have to work with Egypt. We have to work with Lebanon, where also I'm not that negative, because there is a balance and there is still peace in the country. If you see under which pressure the country is, I mean, this is an achievement. We look at Jordan. Jordan, I mean, it's a neighbor of Syria, it's a neighbor of Iraq, and still, let me say, the country is able to function. We look at Morocco, that's far away maybe. So I see a lot of states which are doing well to reasonably well. We can help those states by peaceful means, there was talk about a Marshall Plan economically. If we look at, well, Libya, and Syria are, of course, in deep, deep troubles. We didn't do enough. Also, Putin didn't do enough. Putin could have helped in Syria. He did not do. So we should help those forces in Syria and in Libya who are wanting to have progress and peaceful change. Then about refugees, I'm quite clear. I'm not of the opinion that we in Western Europe or Southern Europe can really change the situation for the better. What we can do is help, money, infrastructure, doctors in, let me say, in the region. So we cannot solve all the problems, but we can work very closely with the progressive forces in the Arab world, with the democratic forces, and we should be prepared to pay for that, to work together. And, well, maybe if we look at Libya, I think that if there can be brokered a peace deal between the tribes, we can assist, maybe the United Nations, and Europe can help. So I say it's a long way, but there are positive signs, and the positive is more important than the negative. We see ISIS or Daesh, that's of course terrible. We see this extreme violence. But I think in the end, moderate Arabs, moderate people of Islam will counter this, and we should help the moderates. Thank you.
Well, and I finished my first round with Mr. Sawiris from Egypt. Of course, which is for you the balance between stability and asking for stability from the Egyptian population, but also the respect of human rights or freedom of speech and all those questions in Egypt, because of course you know that the Sisi regime is maybe not it's difficult for Europe also to discuss, so we want to discuss with Egyptian people, but we have many problems with, of course, the non-respect of human rights, and it's a way to say what happened in Egypt. So what is your point of view?
First of all, we need to recognize that the Arab Spring was not a failure. I mean, what you didn't know here is that the whole region was governed by dictators who were first a dictator, so they were not allowing their people freedom of speech, or they were trespassing on human rights, take Gaddafi or Ben Ali, or even in Egypt. The second point, so what the Arab Spring did is they changed this dogma that you cannot get rid of these leaders, you know. So we finally got rid of these leaders, and people felt, and the young people who did the revolution felt that they've done their job by showing leaders that if you are going to trespass and become a dictator and be corrupt and steal your country, you will be removed. So this has changed totally. I mean, what you don't realize is today that any president now in the region understands that this can happen to him. Before the Arab Spring, presidents thought they were gods, like God. You know, if you ask Gaddafi before the revolution, would you ever think you're going to leave or this could happen to you? He was totally in the sky. He would have never imagined that this could happen to him. So to come now and say the Arab Spring was a disaster, like some people in my country now, they think that the Arab Spring was a conspiracy and they like that. So I am not. I believe it was a good thing with all the bad things that happened after that. That's the third point. Now, I just want to, I mean, I'm going to divert from your question a little bit because I want to comment on what you said, is that, you know, invading Iraq was a mistake, so now we are very cautious. But, you know, you are, the argument is actually counter that is, you made this mess in Iraq, you made the mess in Libya, so there is a responsibility that you solve this mess, not on leaving the people here who cannot, apparently we cannot solve the problem in Libya alone. We cannot solve the problem in Iraq alone. And so because of the first mistake, you said it was a mistake, now ISIS was created in Iraq. So you helped create this ISIS. Now ISIS has moved to Syria and has moved to Libya and so on. So to say now, because we intervened the first time, so and it was a mistake, so we cannot intervene again, but you know, you created this mess, you need to come and help us do this mess. And why we cannot, we could argue, we Arabs, we are not failures. It's not that we cannot solve this mess, but without weapons, because you are not allowing the Libyan army to receive weapons. You're saying we can't allow because weapons could be used. You didn't support the free Syrian army when it was made of liberals, not of fanatic people who chop people's heads. You didn't support it. When the legitimate government in Libya was removed through the weapons, through surrounding the parliament with tanks and weapons, and the legitimate government, which was elected the gentleman next to me, was removed, there was no big deal, you know. And then when 30 million people in Egypt went to the streets to revolt against the second dictator we got after Mubarak, it was called a coup d'etat. My information about the coup d'etat is the army wakes one day, removes the president. But I have never seen a coup d'etat where 30 million people first try to remove the president, you know. So my point is, to come back to your human rights issue, even the problems, if you believe that in Egypt now we have no human rights and there is no freedom of speech and all that, the current president has been there and has seen what happened to two of his predecessors when they start doing all that. So I'm confident that the minute we will have a parliament in Egypt, you know, which should happen before year end, I hope, you know, this all will be, situation will be totally better, you know, because right now in Egypt we are fighting against terror. You know, there's not a single day in Egypt where we don't have an incident, bombs being haphazardly thrown away, assassinations, you know, the general prosecutor was assassinated yesterday, and so on. So it's not the normal atmosphere you live in, and therefore we need to take that into aspect. However, in order not to be misunderstood, any regime that will suppress its people, will not allow the freedom of speech, will put innocent people in jail, has a short lifespan.
Okay, so I'm sure that with the question of the room, we will have question about this balance between fight against extremism and liberty, so globally the freedom for NGO, journalists, etc. But first of all, I have to ask you, because it's in the tweet wall, the first question was, how is it possible to discuss about the future of Arab world without women? But not me, but of course, it's a question of the room, and more question, where are the women and where are the young people? So first a reaction, not because you are men or you are not so young, but because how do you feel the situation for the future? Because of course, women and young people are a big part of the reality in this world. So a short reaction of each of you who want to react on this question of the room? Yes, Mr. Jubil.
Well, I think women took a very, very crucial positive role in all the Arab uprisings, you know. And I would take Libya as an example. Women took part in every aspect of this uprising during the early days of February 17, 2011 uprising, and even after the regime fall down. I would just give an example of this. My party was running in the elections of 2012. We won landslide in Libya against the Muslim Brotherhood and the other parties. You know. We got about 50% of the seats which were designed for the parties in the parliament. More than 50% of those seats were won by women in my party. Not only this, they were women under 30 years of age. They're young, and they were front runners, and they made a hell of a job in those elections, you know. So I would say that the new age, which is a knowledge age, it's not a muscle age as it used to be in the industrial age. It's the age which requires creativity, imagination, innovation, and I think women beats men very badly in those areas. So I would say it's the future are for the women, you know.
Well, I hope that the next meeting we will have many women on the seats. Yes, Mr. Teller. Yes, please.
At the beginning of the revolution, the woman was contributing very active in this revolution, and they were existing everywhere in the civil society movement, in the streets, demonstration. But after it's became an armed fight between two sides, I don't think the women deserve to face this destiny. Without fighting, the women don't fight in Syria. They pay a lot of price. 15,000 women officially, and maybe the real figure is double of that, have been killed by the regime. All of them is peaceful women. 5,000 women in the jail, tortured. Tens of thousands of women have been raped, unfortunately, in Syria. But the women still playing a big role in the other side, in the revolution, in the civil society, in the civil activities, in the media. They are there. And I don't think a revolution without a real contribute of a woman can succeed at the end.
Well, so Mr. Awane, about this question of women, young people, how do you see that, how it's possible to have only men this evening?
Well, I think the stark reality is that the biggest victims of what has been going on in the Arab world have been women and children, for the reasons just explained. You have been to Zaatri, I have been there. Nothing is more heartbreaking than seeing young children with women who support them, because the husband, the man who earned the bread, is missing, most probably dead, and this goes on and on and on and on. And there is also the phenomena that was very rare in our history. I mean, I must emphasize, of rape. This is something new, very much 21st century concept. So, I mean, if you ask me about my personal opinion, I have no problem whatsoever. In fact, I would encourage the enablement of women to participate. But here, this is not a question of choice. It is a question of the imposition of conditions that are very adverse, and of women being the major victims, the ones who have to deal with the consequences of these civil wars, because what we have are really a series of civil wars, complicated by proxy wars at the same time, and so on and so forth. There is no doubt also that, I mean, I tended in my earlier intervention to say that the demographic explosion is not the only reason for what is going on, but it would be equally wrong to say that it is not an important thing. And there is certainly a difference between the people who are in power in the Arab world and between the young people who belong to a different age, to a different training, who have different ideals. How to bridge that that gap is, you know, I mean, one can speak in platitudes and give advice, but it's not easy actually in practice. That is really, to the best of my ability, my answer to this question.
Okay, so I will now open the floor. Yeah, of course.
Regarding the participation of women, first of all, the women in the Arab world should feel equal at home first. And this is by adapting the civil marriage. If you do not adapt a civil marriage in our region, you will not be able to have women sitting here, because it should have equality in the family first. And this is not the case in the Arab world now. And our party in Lebanon and Prime Minister Saad Hariri is with the civil marriage. And he said it bluntly, even if matter of lose or win. We lose some supporters, but it's for the benefit of the country. And especially in a country when you have 18 confessions, and maybe you will have mixed marriages between Muslims and Christians.
Okay. Yes.
It's about my personal experience, actually. I have been jailed for 5 years by Bashar Assad regime from 2001 to 2006. My main worry was my little children. Actually, I wouldn't collapse in the prison without a real woman was holding all the responsibility, not only the home, children, but also my political, my prison in all the world. So the woman actually is, they are exist now in all details of the revolution, in all details of the change, but unfortunately, their contribution is not so visible, and without this contribution, I don't think a man can do what he is doing now. Thank you.
Okay. So we go further, and further with your question or your remarks. I will be very strict. I think that if you want to speak, you have to speak shortly, only maximum 1 minute, otherwise we will not have the answer of the speakers. So I take alternatively women and men. So I start with a man because, okay, but yes, please give a micro to... Un micro, monsieur, le micro.
Bonjour tout le monde. Je voudrais quand même poser la question qu'on est en train de discuter le futur du monde arabe, sans parler du passé du monde arabe. Chacun parmi vous a parlé de son problème, la majorité parmi vous ont parlé de leurs propres problèmes dans le pays. Mais seulement, on n'en parle pas d'Israël dans cette histoire, qui est la cause de tous nos problèmes dans le monde arabe, qui a l'intervention américaine, la conspiration de la Libye, la soi-disant révolution en Syrie. Israël, elle est où dans tout ça? Si on n'arrive pas à parler d'Israël dans ce débat, bien sûr, seulement parler, on n'y arrivera jamais à une solution.
Merci, on va le faire. Alors je prends une deuxième remarque, madame, là derrière. Merci. Or question, hein? If it's a question, it's better.
Okay. I am a Palestinian doctor and a poet. I'm a founder of the Palestinian community where we were honored that you gave a great speech and support to establish this community when we judge Mr. Ariel Sharon in this country. Concerning your remark about Arab leaders as a woman, I just would like to say that there are really a great women who are behind this revolution, but I think media have ignored them even in the Middle Arab world. I would like to mention like Mrs. Nahid Badawiya, and in Syria, and a lot of ladies who struggled and were in prison, so actually, but the media didn't show this struggle. Finally, I would like to note that Dr. Nawal Saadawi ran her presidentship some years ago, and people were just having fun about it. I think many have tried. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for this remark. And the last, before, yes, ici devant. Un micro, s'il vous plaît.
Hello, my name is Marwan Hubeika. I'm a Lebanese citizen and I live in Brussels. I work for a human rights NGO. My question is pertaining to the situation in Lebanon. I mean, we're talking about the future of the Arab world, we're talking about the future of democracy, and I'm noticing that we were supposed to have elections in our country about 2 years ago, and these elections have been postponed on a couple of occasions now. And everything is being put on hold in Lebanon because of the security situation. But I think it's also a general trend that in the Arab world, we put everything on hold on the grounds of security concerns. So we put on hold human rights, we put on hold the rule of law, we put on hold the independence of the judiciary, all of this because of security concerns. But we're also seeing that in the entire Arab world, this policy, this rationale, this narrative simply doesn't work because as we saw in Egypt, we still have terrorist attacks in spite of people being imprisoned, in spite of arbitrary detentions. So my question is, when will the Arab leaders finally understand that achieving stability and security and economic prosperity is not incompatible? Actually, it is pre-requested by having democracy and the rule of law, and actually achieving proper elections and working on electoral law. Thank you.
Okay. So, some reaction, please, from Mr. Aroui about Lebanese election, but also the important question between the balance between democracy, economic growth, or economic recovery, but also human rights and all those questions. And don't forget about Israel-Palestine, because, of course, it's a real question posed by the room.
Regarding Israel and Palestine, I think that the European Union should put into in working the Act number 2, because Israel is violating all the human rights inside Palestine. Regarding Lebanon, in the last 10 years, we should be honest that we have a problem in our political system. And that the Taif agreement, that was a transitional, let's say, agreement between civil war and stability, is not working anymore. First of all, because the international community back then and the regional powers gave an upper hand for the Syrian regime to direct the Taif agreement and to implement it inside Lebanon. And in 2005, after the Syrian troops and the Syrian power was ousted from Lebanon, we started facing this problem in the electoral law, in forming governments. Today, to form a government in Lebanon, it may take 1 year, at least. In postponing the election twice, even. I think that the Lebanese party should have a national dialogue on how to develop our political system and amend the Taif agreement to a more, let's say, moderate political system that can suit Lebanon and its confessions. Thank you.
Mr. Jibril, and even if you want to add some comment about Iran and Turkey, it's in the tweet wall, some question about Turkey and Iran also, if you are inspired.
Well, I would argue that there is a new strategic balance of power in the region, no doubt about it. There is a major shift of the US interest from the Middle East into Asia, simply because the two historical objectives of the United States and the region, namely the security of Israel and the need for Arab oil, both objectives have been met now. Security of Israel is never better since its creation in 1948. And after those upheavals in Iraq, Syria, Egypt, Libya, Yemen, at the destruction of the Arab military capability in Iraq and in Syria, I think the balance of power tilted substantially toward Israel. The United States' main concern today is China, South Korea. Maybe part of the confusion which is taking part in comprehending and dealing with what's happening in the region is that the countries, whether Western European countries or other allies of the United States in the region, they use it to have the United States leading the policies in the region. It's unprecedented. Obama came up with leading from behind. Have those proxies, have those friendly countries of the United States, either in the region or in Europe, be in the forefront. This unprecedented since World War II. Therefore, some sort of confusion and turmoil will exist for a while, till those countries get used, with the exception, I think, France and Britain, who historically have a colonial background in the region, but the present region is completely different from what used to be during World War II and before that. So I would say, the question of Israel, you are absolutely right. What took place, and with the shift of interest in the United States, all those factors are in favor of the Israeli capability and Israeli superiority in the region. Regarding the Syrian issue, I would also argue that for Israel, it's better for its security to have Bashar al-Assad in power today, with its fragile regime ready to sign whatever treaty Israel dictates, than having something unknown, maybe extremist regime instead of him. So this is a risk. And this might explain why the international community, led by the United States, fought Daesh in Iraq and Syria, and they did not fight it in Libya, because Libya is far away from Israel. Daesh there in Iraq and Syria might represent in the future, if they grow substantially, might represent a threat to the security of Israel. The Iranian and the Turkish role in the region will be substantial in the near future. New friends of the United States might emerge in the next few years instead of old allies. They might keep them, but there are new fiancés and new marriages are in the cooking right now. I just want to go back quickly to the issue of women again, which was raised by the Palestinian doctor. I think, as I said earlier, lots of glorious roles have been played by women during those uprisings, and they were not highlighted enough. Not only because men are dominating the media scene, we cannot ignore, we, the Arabs, or most of us at least, the elitists, we have some sort of schizophrenic behavior. We talk about women in a certain way, but when it comes to behaving toward women, we behave differently. Sometimes we behave in a way that women likes to hear, just to get some sort of applaud, some sort of admiration. But the reality is that women, how they are dealt with inside our homes, inside the workplace, are they equal or not? I think this is a question of the state of progress, the state of civilization right now in the region. It's going to take time. We have to deconstruct and reconstruct the socialization process, our educational system, the way we bring up our kids, the media, and the way we interpret and understand religion. Those are the four factors which create values. Without having them reconstructed positively to give a very constructive, equal role for women to take a real crucial part in rebuilding those societies, I think we're going to continue moving in the same circle.
Mr. Sawiris, I have to ask you the balance between the rule of law. So it was asked by the rule of law, the freedom of speech, etc. How do you see this balance in Egypt today? Because of course, it's impossible to imagine the development without a real respect of those rights, and but also the justice, which will be independent. So how do you see that now? Because it's really a question, especially for Egypt, in the tweet wall and also in the room.
I would like to highlight that there was a young activist. She was shot in a demonstration and she died. She was a mother of a child, and the court 10 days ago ruled 15 years jail sentence to the police, to the officer who shot her. And when you read the details of the ruling, you find out that the judge ruled according to the law and according to the Constitution against a representative of the government or the police, you know. If you are hinting towards the death sentences to the Muslim Brotherhoods, you need to know a few facts. First of all, we in Egypt usually don't take the first ruling of what we call the preliminary courts very seriously. I myself was sentenced a few times from a judge, and when I appealed, it was already taken out, because the level of our judges goes higher the more you go in the legal system. So, first of all, you need to know that all these rulings, most of them, 90%, were done in absence. It means that the accused are not there. They fled. And the judge usually, when the accused doesn't come forward, presumes that he's not innocent, because he believes if he was innocent, he would come. While the accused believes, well, this is not a fair trial, I'd better run away. You know, so it's not like that. I don't understand where they're coming from. That's fact one. Fact two, the problem in these sentences is that the Muslim Brotherhood actually targeted the judges and the juridical system. They were one of their monopoly when they targeted everybody, but they included also the judges in the struggle. So you can argue that the judges are also humans, so they might be a little bit biased when they judge. And the fact is, all these accusations, there are people who died. It's not like they're accusing them from the air, you know. The last point is that all these instances, the minute the accused appears in front of the court, the sentence gets cancelled and the trial starts again. So it's not like this death sentence is going to happen and be, by the way, there is not a single death sentence that has been applied in all of these judgments, because you have the right to appeal, and then there is another high court which you go with, and the process takes 3 to 5 years, you know. And mostly in the appeal and the second instances, most of these rulings get cancelled, you know. But just to come to the point that the gentleman mentioned about if you want to invest, personally, I would never invest in a country that does not apply the rule of order, that does not have freedom of speech, that does not respect human rights, or that has a corrupt leader. Because imagine I'm investing now in this kind of country that is autocratic, there is no rule of order, and I have a problem with my investment. Who would I go with, you know? I mean, you have what if the problem, if the juridical system is not independent, if the leader is corrupt himself, you know, how he would stand against someone who's trying to abuse me, you know, when he's abusing his own people, you know. So I agree with him totally. I would not think that there is any conflict between the two. Actually, without democracy, without freedom of speech, without respecting media rights and the young people's rights and all that, I can tell you about myself, I would not be
you, but maybe some other investors found the situation so really easy, yes, in order to make business, and sometimes to make corruption, of course, yes, because instability is also could be a facility. That's a little bit special.
No, I agree with you, and there is full of a lot of these people, you know, and it doesn't say that this doesn't exist, and not everybody is perfect. But what I'm saying is, I agree with the comment that is made. Trying to push all the issues based that there is no stability and there is no, like the problems in Lebanon. It's not about stability and it's not about that. It's about a fight, to be honest, and not between the Muslims and the Christians. It's a fight between the Christian fractions. They cannot agree. Everybody wants to be president. They have 3 candidates and each one is insisting to be the president. So it's not about anything else. It's not about security. It's about that. And they don't put... I'm sorry, I mean, I'm a big lover of Lebanon, and nobody loves the Egyptian. I don't know another Egyptian that loves Lebanon more than me. But in Lebanon, many times they don't put the interest of the country before the personal interest of the sector or the sectarial group. And in this fact, in the Christian community there, they are split because of that. So it has nothing to do with the...
Okay, another round of question, please. So, I'm looking for a woman. Yes, there, madame.
Good evening, everyone. I'm a researcher in American Studies and ALDE individual member. So my question is the following. During the European Development Days, we have spoken about the role of culture in development and democracy. So how can Arab countries maintain the role of culture, especially that culture played an important role in the Arab Revolution? So how can we maintain this role, especially in education and in deconstructing the religious texts in order to maintain terrorism? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Another question? Yes, there. I don't see you, but it's yes.
Bonsoir. Il y a quelque temps, les néoconservateurs américains avouaient leur plan pour le monde arabe, qui était de rendre un ensemble de tribus sans État pour protéger les intérêts d'Israël. Est-ce que, voyant les succès de Milton Friedman, de l'école de Chicago et ainsi de suite depuis une cinquantaine d'années, est-ce que ce n'est pas ce plan qui est à l'œuvre?
Merci. Encore une question, une dame, si possible. Yes, madame là-bas derrière.
Hello, my name is Bianca Barmla. I work for the European Endowment for Democracy. I have a question that follows up the last round of questions from Mr. Hobeika about security and how security concerns can scare us to stop everything and put everything on hold. It's a bit of a follow-up question. We also stop supporting civil society in times of crisis and in zones of conflict. What can be done to continue supporting civil society and to encourage both Arab leaders and European leaders to continue supporting civil society? Plus also, perhaps a second question, what can be done to encourage tourists and businesses to continue to engage with the Arab world and to continue visiting your beautiful countries?
Okay, thank you. So I go to you, Mr. AL-KHASAWNEH. 3 questions. The role of culture and education, which is for you your point of view on this issue. The plan of USA, there is a big plan or not regarding a tribu without state and supporting civil society. Even the situation is a little bit instability. How could we continue to support the civil society?
Fine. May I just make a comment or two on the earlier question about the rule of law? I mean, being a lawyer and a judge, this is of special interest to me. I would kindly draw attention to the fact that it has now become very fashionable to speak all the time of the rule of law. And originally the concept was developed by a British constitutional lawyer, Professor Dicey. Everybody who has studied constitutional law knows his name. But Dicey thought of the concept of the rule of law in a liberal society in a particularly English as opposed to European culture. This is very important to bear in mind. He thought that what distinguished Great Britain was the common law method of building the rights of the people case by case, judge by judge, and on more than one occasion in his book he spoke disparagingly of what he called the continental tendency to have grand declarations. Because these grand declarations include constitutions and written laws and extensive legislation. All of that was not conducive to the rule of law in its original Diceian form. I often ask myself the question, why do we speak all the time of the rule of law, whereas what we mean, but we don't really like to speak about, is justice. Probably the rule of law is the post-Christian positivistic way of looking the idea of justice, which has its natural law implications. This is something that I think we should bear in mind. Whatever it is, I think and I wouldn't want to speak of the rule of law as something that is innately connected with democracy. It is entirely possible to have a rule of law without democracy. And we should not forget that democracy is not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. But justice is an end in itself. I mean, I agree that in a democratic society, the possibilities of achieving justice are probably greater in a different society where there are no checks and balances, but the distinction is one of kind and not of degree. Having said this, I think it is fair to say that the enjoyment of average Arab citizens of their rights was much better in the 50s than it is now, before or after the so-called phenomena which we euphemistically refer to as the Arab Spring. I can give examples from Syria when Bashar al-Khoury, a Greek Orthodox, becomes the president of the Faris al-Khoury, Allah rahmah. Faris al-Khoury becomes the president of Syria. When you look at the mildness with which Syria was ruled in the first few years after the end of the French mandate, with the rule by a small minority and by army officers who come through a coup d'etat. And this phenomena repeats itself all over the Arab world. I think that I might be intruding here, but I think the rights of the Libyans were much better under King Idris than afterwards. But I'm not really an expert on that, but I happen to know people who were close to King Idris and how ideas of not getting into the common treasury and the ideas of justice were much more developed because of what? Because of tradition. And here again we go back to this conflict between the text on the one hand and tradition on the other. The French and the Americans, I think, have tricked the world into believing that constitutions are very important things. I don't happen to agree with that. I think what has happened in the Middle East since the 19th century has been the loss and the death of the old tradition. And this is very difficult to revive or to replicate. And this takes me to the idea of culture. At the moment, I think the Middle East in general, and this applies probably, though to a lesser extent, to non-Arab countries like Iran and Turkey and Afghanistan and Pakistan, is going through a period of self-doubt, doubt about the identity, about the national identity, whether it is, this is why you keep hearing about opposition to transboundary movements. This is often an accusation made against the Muslim Brotherhood. It's a movement that transcends borders. But throughout history, all the great ideas have transcended boundaries. I mean, had it not been for Paul, Christianity probably would have still been an obscure Jewish sect in Jerusalem. It was Paul who transcended the boundaries of Palestine. And the same applies to Islam and to communism and to Confucianism. And so here, it is an idea of, first of all, believing not in the superiority, but in the rightness of your cause and of taking pride in your culture. Without that, I simply cannot see all the talk about reform and what will happen taking place when there is this loss of a sense of identity and of who are we.
And in this protest of identity, which is the role of civil society, and how could we, or how do you think that civil society have to be involved, not only in cultural question, but also globally in the process? Because it's also culture. Civil society could, of course, participate to its...
Civil society is very important, and civil society, since the beginning of the 20th century, has been one of the victims of the emergence of the modern centralized, highly centralized state which wanted to do everything, emulating the Western model, but without the refinement of the Western model. I'm very glad that there is now talk about going back to civil society, because if you go to pre-industrial, or in fact even to the 19th century societies, the role of civil society at the village level, at the town level, the existence of endowments, religious endowments, charitable endowments, and so on and so forth, was the existence of civil society in a concrete and tangible way. All of that was wiped, in fact, by the assertion of the state. The state is very important. And this was not part of the original or the historical tradition of the Middle East.
Okay, I take a last question, 2 or 3 last questions, then I will give the floor to Guy Verhofstadt in order to, because he joined us, so he will say what he thinks about all those questions. And after, I have a last question for each of you in order to conclude. So 2 or 3 questions in the room, and I'm looking for a man first, there, and then a woman have to be prepared. Okay, there. Monsieur, ici.
What, in your opinion, feeds the current extremism in the Middle East? What can be done about it? What role does Saudi Arabia play in all of this, and how important is the transformation of Saudi society for putting an end to some of this extremism?
Okay, Madame, where are you? There? A woman. She was there? No? Here. Ah, here. Okay, Madame. With the glasses.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned earlier the need to have new frames to think about the future of the Arab world. What would you suggest as frames and tools that we should have to think about the future? Then the second question, since you're all here, is about regional cooperation. How do you think this can help also to meet the future challenges? And then last point is indeed something that we read and we experience know more and more here in Europe, in the region, about radicalization, fight against terrorism. How do you think we can target these, and what would you propose at the national and regional level?
Okay, and I'll take a last one there. Yes, tout en haut. Vite.
US and other countries of NATO are fighting ISIS and Daesh in Iraq and Syria, while Turkey is actually helping Daesh, and while Saudi Arabia and Qatar are helping also Daesh, and they're two supposedly allies of the West. What do you think about this situation and apparent contradictions?
Yes, of course. So extremism and regional cooperation between Saudi Arabia and all
First of all, I don't agree that Turkey and Saudi Arabia and Qatar supporting ISIS. I don't think that any country and this regime will support ISIS, while all the European and the American just keep silence of that. This is part of the stereotype. I think. And regarding the phenomena of extremism, let's look for the other side. How it have started. Let's talk about the Iranian factor here, who played a very destructive rule in what's happening in all the area. It's working. In Yemen, in Syria, yes, there is extremism of ISIS is fighting in Iraq and in Syria, but in Syria also we have 40,000 extremists supported by the Iranian came and fighting for the sectarian reason. So I don't agree that this countries, what you have mentioned, that supporting ISIS. ISIS is fighting the regime of that countries, and ISIS, first of all, is part of the failure of the international community in Iraq and in Syria, especially. Let's see, go just a few years ago, how the Sunnis in Iraq have been depressed, suppressed by the government, Shia government, who's totally ruled by the Iranian, according to the sectarian standard. The same is going in Syria. So we are talking about a reaction. ISIS was a reaction for these policies. It's not healthy, but when we want to get rid of it, we will have to treat with the main cause of this phenomena, which I mean the Iranian project in the area. How everybody is seeing this project, and unfortunately, the international community dealing with very softly with the Iranian. For 2-3 years, they were negotiating for nuclear weapons while they invade Iraq, for example, without any real excuse for that. Does not mean that I support this dictatorship of Saddam Hussein. He was dictatorship, and I don't support it. But this is part of the double standard of the world. Of the double standard which the international community is using regarding the area. We have, I want to, a few words about the Turkish and the Iranian. Okay, we don't see Turkey sending or supporting a Sunni group here or there and fighting in Algeria or fighting in Yemen or fighting in Iraq, etc., etc. But yes, they have their interest. But in the other side, we see the Iranian who claim that they are resistance axis, spreading all this chaos in the area. Thank you.
Well, we can disagree on something. That's not a problem. Huh? Okay. So, Mr. Sawiri,
no, I
please?
disagree with my colleague here. First of all, I disagree with him. There is no doubt in my mind that Qatar has been financing all the radical groups in the region. They have, whether you call them Ansar al-Sharia or you call them the Jihad or you call them Fagr Libya or whatever names they have, all these different names, and some of them ended up being called ISIS. So ISIS didn't come all just for these young people traveling from Europe. No, it came from the development of many of these radical groups which in the end ended up under the reign of ISIS or are working under different brands. You can have different brands, but here the same twisted up mind. And it has been financed by Qatar, and I don't agree with my colleague here. Okay. The second point is about Turkey. It's the last point. You can argue, yes, Turkey is not financed, but Turkey watched the Kurdish people being slaughtered. They watched the Yazidis being slaughtered. And what did they do there on the borders? They didn't fire one bullet. They didn't try to save human beings being slaughtered in front of their eyes. So why? Because they're Kurdish, and they are actually worried about the Kurds. So no problem if ISIS is killing the Kurdish, and if the other Yazidis or Christians are being, it's okay also. So if you just watch people being slaughtered and say, I don't interfere, you are actually interfering because you're not doing anything to establish justice. Thank you.
Okay, so Jibril?
I will just take the answer of Mr. Sawiris to the question answered by a gentleman here about the conspiracy theory, this whole uprising, which was called the Arab Spring, was a conspiracy, or it was planned by the big power or by Western or whatever. I think this is do a huge injustice to those young people. I am an eyewitness to what took place, at least in Libya, Egypt, and Tunisia. I claim that I was very close. In Libya, I was part of the events, not only watching the events. In all three cases, the Islamists came to the streets no less than 4 or 5 days when the uprising took place. They were not the initiators of this. I agree that there was a plan, but the plan exploited the Arab Spring. They did not initiate the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring was an Arab-made event. It was made by those young people who were frustrated, who were unemployed, and their expectations were very high, and they paid a heavy price for this. And unfortunately, we can see that those revolutions, most of them at least, are stolen in front of their eyes. Their dreams, nobody today, for instance in Libya, can remember the first martyrs, the first who died in the streets. But you remember me, you remember others who were in the television, the scenes, but the real doers who initiated this whole thing, nobody remembers them anymore, So it's a genuine thing, but it's been exploited because this is unprecedented in the history of the Arab world. It was not planned, it was spontaneous, it was a reaction to three things: lack of development, lack of a nation building. There was no sense of citizenship, with the exception of having a passport or an ID. This is the only citizenship definition in the Arab world. But citizenship with human rights, with real rights, that you can go to the judiciary system to defend your rights, it's not established yet. And the third thing, there was a trend that some of those republics are trying to have their sons succeed them, whether it's in Egypt, in Libya, Syria, they have already done it, or in Yemen. So the Libyan case is a little bit different because it's the only oil exporting countries where the Arab Spring took place. This is because it's a rich country, but you cannot see the development in the country. If you go to Libya, you feel as if you go, there was a movie by Michael Fox called Back to the Future. If you go to Libya, you feel as if you went back to the 40s. So we cannot deny those young generations the credit that they did something really splendid, something unprecedented in the history of the Arab world. Okay. So it's been stolen, yes. And their role is to bring it back to the track. They have to go back to the street to defend their rights again. Because those elites who are in the front line right now are not eligible enough to defend their rights. They have to bring back their revolution into their street back. You have to run again for their rights.
Thank you.
Otherwise, it will not work.
Thank you for reminding this important starting, because of course it's the starting. Guy Verhofstadt, if you want to, yes. Please.
So first of all, I want to apologize that I'm so late in this debate, but I got meetings in the European Parliament, and I'm very pleased already that this morning I could participate in the in-camera meeting with all of you. And I want, in fact, to make a short statement, building further on what Mahmoud Jibril has said. It is that so many years later already, well, 4 or 5 years later now, we already have forgotten what the real origin was of the Arab Spring, and that we have already forgotten that on the body of Bouazizi, who started this revolution, you remember in Tunisia, his body was covered with what? With the red flag of Tunisia, not with the green flag of the Islam. And that was, in my opinion, proof of the fact that it was about social injustice, lack of democracy, lack of human rights, and we need to remember the spirit of the Arab Revolution, because everybody is now in the West, in our societies, in our media, pointing the finger and saying, oh, see what happened, this Arab Spring have created the tragedies that we see now in these societies, in Syria, but also in Western Europe. All the migration flows, it's caused by the Arab Spring. The reality is that the Arab Spring was a fight mainly of young, independent people, students, lawyers, whatever, doctors, to liberate their country and to ask for themselves, for their society, what they have seen, what they see on internet in other societies. Why, if a democracy is possible in a number of countries, why should not the democracy be possible in the Arab countries? If human rights exist in other countries, why it should not be possible? If there is a redistribution of wealth on an equal foot in a number of, why it is not possible in the Arab world? That is the origin, and we have to remember that, Isabel, because that is something that we forget for the moment, and we look with bad feelings to the Arab Spring, and I'm also pretty sure that's the second statement that I want to make. This is not the end. This is only the beginning, and they're going to follow again a number of appraisals, revolutions. You call them as you wish. But the third statement that I want to make is what can we do in Europe? Because it's fantastic to analyze with our friends what is happening in the Arab world. The question is, what can we do and what we did not do in the last years? I see three things, if you allow me. The first is to be more involved as a European Union in the Middle East and in trying to solve the problems in the Middle East, including the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. We play no role at all. That's the reality, because of a lack of unity. If there are 28 opinions, what do you want? How can we influence things for the good if there are 28 different opinions in the Union? So to be involved in the Middle East, in the problems of the Middle East, in a positive way, trying to broker some solutions, that's the first thing we have to do. And the second thing is really to do something, really have a new neighborhood policy with the Middle East and with the Arab world. We didn't do that. What we mainly did was to repackage the existing subsidies, funds of the past. We have not developed a genuine neighborhood policy that was an answer from our side, from the European side, to the Arab Spring. We said that we should help Egypt. We didn't do it. We said that we should help Libya. We didn't do that. We sent the UBA mission only 2 years too late, and they are still, I think, in their compound and not really on the ground and working on this border controls that we didn't do anything in additional money, in additional help, in additional programs going to the, mainly it was for the packaging, what we did. So that's the second thing to do, a real, genuine, credible neighborhood policy, not by creating the new union for the Mediterranean. That's a fantastic idea, but it is producing nothing at all, but by having real, between the European Union on the one hand and the Arab states on the other hand, a plan. You can call it a Marshall Plan, you name it what you want, but with additional means and additional tools that doesn't exist today. And the third thing we need to do is to take stock of what we didn't do the last years. We are incredible in the West. When people are not asking to come in, like in Iraq, we come in. And when people like in Libya ask that there should be a UN force, we don't do it. That is mainly what the West is doing. And that brings me to Syria. If there are the problems in Syria of today, it's because from the beginning it was a revolution like the others. There was no difference between the Syrian revolution and the causes of the Syrian revolution than the revolution in Libya or than the revolution in Egypt. It was the same people, and it are still the same people who are in the Free Syrian Army, asking for equipment, arms, what we never have given to them. And then we say, oh, how it is possible that all these extremists are there in Syria. It's our own responsibility mainly. It's our own responsibility because of Iraq, but that's already a long story. And because of our lack of taking responsibility in the case of Syria, but also in the case of... and then finally, what we need to do also is to understand that we need to help our friends, moderates, Democrats. That are the people that we have to defend in these countries. And not trying like the Americans are doing, trying every time to reinterpret, make a new interpretation about their policies in the different countries. That is what they are doing. Americans, I like them very much, but their interpretations of what was happening in the Middle East don't apply them because they doesn't serve to anything. Their ideas of balance of power. In the time of Bush, it was the Sharansky doctrine. Let's create everywhere democracies, and then we can solve all the problems. Well, they went into Iraq, and we have the mess we have today. So I like them, but I think we have the duty of our conviction makes that we need to support democratic parties, democratic leaders, moderate leaders, and to try that they are governing the Arab world and not one or other balance of power with Muslim Brotherhood as we have seen the last years in the Middle East. So that's my message.
So we have last 5 minutes, so I will ask to each of you, it's one question of the room, how do you, in your country, how do you feel the building of a new leadership? Because, of course, we need interlocutor, but we need leadership. You need leadership. And second question, what do you think about the package of Verhofstadt, package of European Union, what we can do? Which is your reaction? And you can, of course, add some new demand or request to West or to European Union. So, in 2 minutes, who start? Yes, Lebanon. Mr. Hariri.
Yes.
2 minutes, huh?
2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
That's like that.
Regarding Lebanon, Mr. Hbai'a said that there was the election was postponed twice. And you know, the election is the main, let's say, way to have a new leadership in the country. I think that our party now, as Future Movement, we have a draft of an electoral law that is mixed between majority and proportional equation. In this way, as a party, maybe we will lose more than 7 or 8 seats, but we will have better representation for the individual or neutrals in the country that can come and be MPs inside the parliament. I have a small, I want to interpret a little bit about terrorism and Islam. There is a war on moderate Islam since the burning of Ibn Rushd books. It's not new. And what we are seeing today is another, with ISIS for sure, it's another war on Islam. I think that we as politicians, we don't know about Islam as the clerics and the institution that can legalize within the religion, the Islam religion. There should be a renaissance here. We should call the Daesh people that they are not Islam. They are not part of our religion. It should be clear for everyone. Egypt, Al-Azhar has a role. Saudi Arabia has a role. The Gulf country has a role. Turkey has a role. We should say that Daesh is terrorist and not an Islamic movement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jibril, the leadership exists still in Lebanon, but what about the leadership in Libya? And what are you waiting from European Union?
Well, I think there are lots of Libyans today who are playing a leading role in trying to clarify and explain to the rest of the world that Libya and North Africa in general will be very critical in the near future in the stability and peace in the Mediterranean. If we look at the African continent, and I repeated this before, today it's 965 million people. 2025 is going to be 1,258,000,000. But by 2050, it will be approaching 2 billion people. Europe is shrinking and aging. So millions and millions of young people are marching north. Illegal immigration is going to continue and going to increase exponentially. Therefore, investing in the stability and order in North Africa, whether Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Morocco, it's not an assistance from Europe anymore. It's an investment in your national security. So you better do rethinking of the strategic importance of this region. The question is not of training some Libyans or providing some economic assistance or some technical assistance.
Or attack some boats.
The question now became either make it or break it, whether you're going to protect the national security and of the European citizen, European borders, or you're going to let the flames. Libya today is a fireball. It might roll in any direction, north, east, west, so you better watch out. You intervene now in terms of helping us restore order and stability and rebuild our state that we dreamed of on the 17th of February, or everybody is going to pay a heavy price.
Thank you. Mr. Sawiris, same questions.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. I mean, first, you want the young people, young leaders and new leaders, you need to empower the youth. In our societies, we still look at these younger people as if we know better because we have gray hair. This is a problem, you know. So the first thing is you need to empower the youth. The second, you need to avoid having this youth radicalized. So you mentioned Al-Azhar. As a Muslim, would you in good faith say that the Azhar is doing its work, is doing its duty, is gathering all these young people who go with this crazy mind? He takes a machine gun and kills innocent people at the beach or bombs something. Did they do their duty to sit with them, to explain to them that whoever told them that they can takfir, you know, the society or all the ideas they put in their heads, who's actually sitting with these degenerated people to clear their minds and bring them back to the real virtues and values of Islam? And the answer is no one. No one. You know, so the second reason why what's fueling extremism in our region, they have no hope, there are no jobs, there are no investment, there's nothing is happening. And the West will pay a high price because all the money you will need to recruit police and patrols to avoid these immigrants coming to you, all the things you need to do to provide help the economies of this region, help fueling investments in these regions, help us to create jobs and give these young people a hope so they, instead of going crazy like that, because you are competing, I call it always the ISIS package. The ISIS package is a great package. You come as a young guy, you will be a hero, you will have a gun next to you, so you look like Guevara or all the 60s when they were all fighting in the jungles. You're a big guy, you're a big shot, you have a gun. Secondly, I'm going to give you $2,000 a month, and by the way, there is a bonus. Sexual services like you want. So all these women you take, you can rape or have a slave woman, you know. So the package is a really amazing package. How can you compete against this package? See? So this is what we need to create, you know. Otherwise, they recruit better, their offer is better, their package is better. We can't even offer them a job today. So he's sitting home 2-3 years doing nothing. Definitely his mind is going to be generated, and definitely he says, my life is done. What do I lose when I go and kill 40 innocent people like that? Thank you.
Okay, I want to add for Tunisia, because Tunisian friends are not there, of course, because of the situation in Tunisia. But what was said this morning by Yassin Brahim, but also all the speakers in Tunisia, they are asking also that we stop to speak about Tunisian exception and to do an exceptional policy regarding Tunisia, and especially regarding the protection of the borders, because of course the protection of the borders is a big problem for Tunisia. So I added because they are not there in order to say that themselves. So, your last word?
I don't like to speak of Jordanian exceptionalism, but I think it would be fair to say that Jordan had been spared the worst effect of the Arab Spring, even at its height. I mean, for example, there was not in any significant way a call for regime change. And the government of Jordan, the different governments, resorted to a policy of containing the movements in the streets, of making reforms. I don't think that the reforms were enough, and I am dismayed by the fact that they were more on paper than in reality. But for the crucial question, and it is a crucial question, how do you avert another Arab Spring? I think the role of the youth is essential, is very important. And this can happen, I think, in Jordan specifically, by reforming the election law, by non-interference by the security services in the actual process of elections. That would lead a natural way for the young to reach the top positions. If that doesn't happen, there will always be a sense of exclusion. So not so much affirmative action is called for. It is a negative action, not interfering in the elections, in the election law, reforming it. And I think very positive programs for redistribution of wealth. In my opinion, one of the major functions of the government is the redistribution of wealth in favor of the poor and the general population. That would also help enable the youth to play a much greater role than they do at the moment.
You have the last word for you.
In Syria, Iraq, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, till the 50s or the 60s, we used to have an unstable democracy at that countries. It had been replaced by a stable dictatorship, by the support of the international community, especially the European and the American at that time, because they loved this stabilization. After 50 years of this stabilization, we have the explosion in these societies, because under the surface, the society was boiling. What's happening now in Syria? Yes, there is ISIS, there's extremists, and I'm talking about Syria, just right about Syria. The international community can play a very big role to get rid of ISIS when he agreed to fight ISIS and the dictator sectarian regime in the same time. Like, by the way, Turkey is proposing that for all the time, because not only the blood of the Kurdish Yazidi is important here, also have a million Syrians, blood is important. So fight, be a partner, real partner with the Syrian revolution to get rid of the ISIS and the regime. In the same time, the vast majority of the fighters will be part of it, and in this case, the European can be part of the table of the day after to decide the shape on the system in Syria, and I'm sure in this case it will be a civil democratic, free system. Otherwise, then you can't just sit back and asking for get rid of the ISIS without, in the same time, fighting the reason which somehow helped to create of this ISIS. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much to our speakers. Thank you to you, because I'm sure we started with these sentences. It's not the beginning of the end, but the end of the beginning. I think that it will be the case for this debate and all the future of our world. We'll be sure that the Spinelli Group or other partners will develop new debates and pay attention on what will happen in your country. So please, thank you very much. Be courageous in your country. We have to be courageous in the civil society, in the European institution, in order to push, because of course we feel that the interest for this part of the world is decreased or is totally focused on terrorism and all those questions. So we have to support all can be done regarding the good evolution and a real Arab Spring. So thank you very much. Thank you to you, and see you the next time.